Did you know that almost 21 million Americans have at least one addiction, yet only 10% of them receive treatment? Drug overdose deaths have more than tripled since 1990. Alcohol and drug addiction costs the U.S. economy over $600 billion every year. With skyrocketing addiction rates, it has become an epidemic across the United States, according to the United States Addiction Center. Addiction doesn't discriminate. It can affect anyone at any point in life. It isn't something that you are able to protect yourself by moving. It is something that has affected millions of people regardless of age, gender, or location. In college, I've seen a lot of my friends fall into an uncomfortable usage of illicit drugs. Some aren't ever able to come out of it and struggle with addiction at such an early age. Some that I have surrounded myself with have given their life to addiction and have died because of this disease. It is so common to not acknowledge the problem because it is so normalized in my generation to partake, and in some cases, it comes off as judgmental when you try to speak to individuals about the problems you see occurring. It is important to remove any prejudgments from addiction, as it is something that needs to be treated as the disease that it is. Using judgment might push the person fighting addiction further into their addiction and refrain from seeking any medical help. Addiction is something that needs to be talked about so that individuals that struggle with this disease feel comfortable in seeking the help that they need. According to a USA Today study, about half of the nation's 5.4 million college students admit to binge drinking or taking illicit drugs at least once per month. How many of those students fall into the disease that addiction is? In my experience through college and as a student, addiction isn't talked about nearly enough. The use of drugs is so normalized through the party scene in college, along with the use of alcohol. It starts with drinking and doing drugs once or twice, to drinking and doing drugs every single weekend, to your body becoming reliant on it and you begin to abuse these substances during the week. It is a disease that spreads fast and efficiently, and it's almost impressive to others how frequently one partakes in either drinking or doing drugs. Along with addiction being a serious consequence to the usage of drugs, there is also a serious concern about illicit drugs being laced with fentanyl. According to the DEA, fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that is 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. Because of this, it is very easy to overdose on it once it is ingested just once. It is being used to lace a lot of illicit drugs to disguise it as being strong and is killing thousands upon thousands of people. Deaths involving synthetic opioids other than methadone, which is primarily fentanyl, continue to rise, with 56,516 overdose deaths reported in 2020 alone, according to NIH. It is important to be educated on addiction and possible things that could lead to overdose to the youth of this generation. I think college campuses should have higher levels of awareness of some of the dangers that the environment of college campuses involve, as I've seen my friends suffer from addiction and some die from the disease because they were scared and felt judged to receive help from any institution around them. If there was more awareness and preventative measures, the rate in which kids are dying today would decrease, as the environment in which induces these things would be controlled more. A separate study published by the CDC and the National Institute on Drug Abuse in 2020 found that 3 out of 4 people who experience addiction eventually recover. That's nearly 75% of people. If institutions offered more ways for students to reach out and be able to communicate with one another and communicate with their institution, a large majority of them would be able to fight this disease. If college institutions already had prioritized these resources to help students, and there wasn't so much judgment for this disease that affects such a large sum of people, there would be a higher possibility that some of the people close to me wouldn't have fallen to their deaths from the consequences that addiction has. Options for treatment need to be recognized and enabled to their students. When I was a student at an in-person college, I knew several people who suffered from an addiction, but I couldn't name one resource that I'd be able to give them to receive help. The small surveys and drug classes that colleges require at the beginning of the year become lost in translation and is just not enough when school starts and the party scene is enabled. A lot of students suffer from overwhelming amounts of stress and turn to drugs and alcohol to relieve this. In my experience, it also felt as if those who died from drug abuse were seemingly covered up by the institution, and it wasn't really spoken about. If more universities recognize these problems and use the people that have died and suffered from this disease to enable resources, it would reach a lot more individuals personally. With more resources available and the refrainment of judgment, there can be less people that die and suffer from this disease. Thank you.